Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. This is Scott Shetty of Geopath. I'm here with Dylan Mabin, who is our SVP of Insights and Innovation. We just want to say thank you to everyone for taking their time today to join this webinar. This is the seventh in our series of overview sessions on the coming Geopath Insights Suite, also talked about as more as well. Today we wanted to give you a quick overview. This may not be new to many of you, but a quick overview of the new Insights platform, some of the benefits. But the most of the time today we wanted to spend talking about understanding hourly impressions and the coming hourly impressions, which are the first major milestone of our whole development schedule. And they're available now in the raw data form, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about what they are, what that means to the whole industry, and then ultimately where and how you can access this coming on May 12th, actually. But please feel free to ping us with any questions throughout the session. There's a questions module in the features of the webinar, and we'll stop and double check kind of questions throughout to make sure we're responding as quickly as possible. So ultimately what this tool is and what the benefits of what we're trying to do are these ultimately enhanced audience insights. And I know we've been talking about this for a number of months, but the key things we want to make sure everybody in the industry knows and everybody on the call knows is what the basis of the new measurement system is going to be. Is that it's leveraging location data from mobile and GPS devices. And why is that a good thing? Why is that great for the industry? Why is that great for us? Is that it's going to allow us greater precision of measurement. That's ultimately what's going on with this. And we're going to be leveraging, as I said, mobile data, connected car data, and GPS data. And this is in an aggregated, anonymous fashion. I always think that's important. I want to make sure everybody knows that we're not pulling in any personal identifiable information. And that's really important for us as an industry and something that we always want to communicate as we're talking about more and the data that we're pulling in. But what is this data going to allow us to do? We're pulling in data from hundreds of millions of mobile devices, and it's going to allow us a greater understanding of movement at the trip level for people. It's going to understand the home locations of people at an aggregate level. So we're talking about now at a census block group level, which previously we've been delivering information at a county level when you think of demographics. Now we're going to be able to get down to a more granular level of census block groups, which is about plus or minus 1,500 people. And we're also, with our traffic count sources, that's increasing from current sources of about 80 to 90,000 to 2.5 million. So why am I saying all this? Basically to help reinforce the fact that this level of data, this infusion of precision data is going to help us have a much more granular view of the audience and view of the inventory. And in addition, it's going to allow us to expand our target audience profiling capabilities. Right now, through our partnerships with Esri, we're going to increase our demographic capabilities to more than 6,000 different individual data points, and that'll include demographics, purchase behavior, and behavioral segments. And again, if you've been on these calls before, you know and can see some of what's to come. Also, one of the benefits of this greater precision is the ability for us to report by time of day, day of week, and even show and realize that seasonal audience variation, which again is currently in our numbers, but is normalized out because we obviously currently have one number that's same in January as it is in December. And now we'll be able to see those fluctuations of inventory, of impressions rather, throughout this much more granular level. And that is a lot of, honestly, what we want to talk about today on the call as well. And because of the data will be updated monthly throughout the course of when it's launched, we will have greater predictive capabilities, so because we'll have a greater sense of actual audience delivery, which will allow us to have that historical data and allow us to have those greater predictive capabilities. So that's just a little bit of kind of the benefits and the overview of what's coming. If you would like an actual demonstration, I know a lot of times on these calls we demonstrate the proof of concept tool, but we wanted to save time and really spend, like I said, a lot of time on the hourly impression data that's going to be to come and be available to answer questions for that. If you'd like a demonstration for you or your organization, please reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. We'd be happy to show you and walk through the proof of concept tool, like I said, that we've shown in the past. I do want to spend a quick few moments on the development schedule so everybody has a good sense of where we are. So currently, the first major milestone, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, was the release of hourly data. And that is available, as I said earlier, in raw data form, but we are going to be launching a web-based service as well as kind of access through our API on May 12th. So that is being finalized and finished up. But if anybody has a need and wants that raw data, now it is available, and we could talk to that a little bit more at the end of the call. And then moving into Q2, we will have capabilities coming out to be able to, through our partnership with Esri, mapping population and behavioral data, where you'll be able to really get a sense and start to leverage and understand and see some of those 6,000 data points that I just mentioned, and really understand kind of what the capabilities of those are, how to map them, and really be able to identify trade areas and within drive times, walking times, as well as distance as well, and then overlay that information into these. So be able to pinpoint as well different points of interest, different businesses, et cetera, through that tool. We gave an overview of that tool in the last webinar, and if you're interested, please reach out and we can point you to that webinar. Moving forward in Q3 is where you'll start to see some of the familiar media metrics. That's where the first base level tool comes out, the first prototype of it, and that will be with test data for Chicago data only. And that is to allow our members to really start to explore the tool, start to work with the different APIs and understand how to plug into the tool ultimately if you're an organization that is going to be porting the data in and not using our web-based services. But as quickly from that, we will be expanding capabilities and expanding data. So in Q4, we'll have full nationwide data with demographics available at the board level to understand that actual audience delivery, and then moving into Q1 with the actual release of the tool in the early part of next year with monthly data updates, and that will allow for greater, as I said earlier, post-campaign analysis and allow that kind of historical data analysis as well. So going to want to talk about our understanding hourly impressions and what that means for us. So want to go all the way back. So what's an impression? And essentially it's the gross number is the sum of all media exposures, including exposures against the same person. So this does not take out any duplication, and it actually includes the duplication. So it's not the unique number of people seeing any particular piece of inventory or particular ad. It's the actual the gross number, the collection, the buildup of all media exposures to this piece of inventory, and that can be added across inventory, across media, and across time period. One of the things to think about is for within out-of-home impressions, that reflects kind of a scene impression. So it reflects the actual a piece of inventory seen, where because of the way we calculate our ratings, and we calculate using the visibility index, adjustment index, to provide a likelihood to see, which is different than a lot of industries. So as we start to think about and talk about hourly impressions, what does that mean, and what are the benefits of that? Why are we doing that? And really it starts to, the benefits of it, it starts to help us understand and give our members an understanding of, audience patterns at the individual board location. What does that mean? So we're starting to be able to see kind of the peak season and seasonality for pieces of inventory. And Dylan will be showing you some examples of that. And, and you can even think about it like an example that we often throw out is like, think about it as a ski resort, right? Traffic in that area is going to be very different in the winter than it is in the summer. And now we're able to see those variations, as well as prime time for any particular piece of inventory at any point of a given day. Is there a particular time of day that piece of inventory is most efficient at delivering a particular audience or audience overall? And then also having this information for vehicular and pedestrian audience as well. So then again, getting down to that by month, by day of week, and even by hour, which is the ultimate, intent of the hourly impressions. One thing I do want to caveat is this first release of data, this first release of hourly data is for research purposes only. It is for non-commercial use, and we'll continue to probably kind of say that and remind everybody throughout the release of this information and the release of this data. And so I guess that may beg the question of like, why is this being released? Well, we want our members to work with this data and to really understand and empower our members to explore the capabilities of hourly audience, right, of this data, and prepare for how organizations will want to work with this data in the future when the full tool is released and hourly composition data are available in 2018 as well. So I'm going to pause, see if there are any questions, but I'm also going to hand it off to Dylan, who's going to talk through some examples and just some overall kind of meaning of kind of why are we doing this and what are some of the benefits behind it as well.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so I'm going to reiterate, as Scott warned, this is going to be intended for non-commercial uses, and just to provide even more context of that, this is all part of GeoPath working with the industry to get toward a much more useful measurement insights tool that we're all building, that we've all funded, and we're all really excited about bringing to market. But it's much more capable than anything we've ever brought to the industry before because of the ability to get down to impressions by hour, being able to look at the audience home location and demographics across an incredibly wide array of different parameters, from consumer information to audience segmentations, attitudinal stuff. And so this is part of that learning curve. We want to make sure that we're all introducing concepts, working through these together, giving everybody time to understand how these are going to impact business practices so that they can make sure that we're all ready to utilize this to its fullest once it does come out for commercial purposes later this year and into the subsequent years. So just for as an example, we're going to start with looking at a piece of inventory and the hourly impressions that it delivers. This is an urban panel in Chicago. This is at Grand Avenue and State Street. You can see there it's highlighted in the circle in red. And we can look at the total impressions throughout the entire year because we have this information by hour, so we can aggregate it at multiple levels. So first we'll start at the familiar total impressions for a week, like our weekly impressions. And what you'll see here is this red line. This is our baseline today. This is the average weekly impressions that we are reporting. And if we look at the average weekly impressions by month of the year, you'll see that there's some various fluctuations. You're seeing a little bit more activity, March, June, July, slightly above average during the winter months, November, December, January, February, at slightly below average. And this is essentially what the ultimate goal is to be able to have this understanding, this level of detail to understand the seasonal fluctuations of every single individual piece of inventory. So as you can see, the high here is about 44,000 impressions per week, dipping down to about 36, maybe 37,000 impressions per week in November. And we can aggregate this at different levels too. So if you want to look at the distribution of impressions by different days of the week, Sunday being the lowest, normal weekdays, Monday through Thursday being all the same, Then Friday actually being a little bit higher, probably some more people going into town, meeting friends for dinner, things like that. This is not only a business district, but also quite a few restaurants, tourist destinations there. And then Saturday also being slightly above average, second only to Friday. So this is some information that we could look to identify when is the best time to put certain types of messages or to cater certain types of messages to certain types of audiences. What are they going to be engaged on? So the fact that the highest level of audience delivery Friday and Saturday, that it might be catered toward a message that is socially engaged, because people might be more thinking about what they're going to be doing with their friends and families for the weekend on those days, things like that. These are considerations that we may have never had actual metrics to back up those claims, and now we do. Now, we can even drill down further. This is hourly impressions. This is the most granular building block that we are calculating audience at, and then obviously it can be rolled up to days of the week, complete weeks, months, and then the full yearly impression number. So we have a lot of flexibility here for campaign lengths that are of any length now. Just all you need to know is the start time, start date, campaign end date, and you can calculate the total audience delivered. So as you can see here that there's slightly more audience, sort of peak audience delivery in the early morning hours, lots of activity, and then sort of trailing off. One of the things that we've learned throughout our exploration of audience information coming from mobile location devices is that the activity of individuals is a little bit more strung out throughout the rest of the day. A lot of people, especially commuters, are very heavy early in the morning. And then the decisions on where to go after work or when people actually leave work, that sort of is spread out over a much larger period of time in the evening hours. People might, do some happy hours with their friends, things like that. So that's one of the reasons why in certain areas you see this will be a sort of a familiar pattern that you may see in other areas. But you also see a little bit of audience being delivered in the morning hours as well. And this is available for every single piece of inventory across the country. So you can see some local familiar patterns. We'll get to some other examples in a second. Sorry, one other thing I wanted to talk about here was that we can break down the total audience now by vehicular and pedestrian impressions. And this is something else that you may want to take into consideration, especially for inventory that's in urban areas where it's more catered toward pedestrian audiences. Understanding what that composition is as well may be helpful to understand how many people are walking around in the vicinity of those ads versus driving, as to what type of message you would prefer to put on them. So when we're talking about the different patterns that you see around the country, we're going to look at 4 different examples here. We're going to start first with the French Quarter in New Orleans. And if you're familiar with New Orleans, this is where we're all going to be in a couple weeks. If you're going to be joining us at the OAAA GeoPath Annual Conference, we're really excited about sharing even more of this information with everybody. You'll see that there's some familiar patterns here, given that you've got Mardi Gras in the early spring, lots of activity, March and April, dropping a little bit towards the summer, late summer, and then October you see another little spike. One of the big events that happens in October in New Orleans is a big jazz festival, also celebrating Treme. Gillette Stadium, Massachusetts, big football space. This pattern reflects football season, which is pretty cool to see. This is the level of sensitivity and the type of activities that the GeoPath insights will now be able to reflect. Long Beach Island, New Jersey, this is a really dramatic area of major summertime, vacation time for people to go down there. So you can see that the audience during July and August over-indexes the annual average delivery by almost 2.5 times. So pretty exciting there too, to be able to understand how those patterns fluctuate. Now, to differentiate between what this resource is for non-commercial use is to understand the total audience fluctuations. What's going to be coming down the pipeline later on this year and into next year is understanding the varying composition of audiences. So in this, we can say that there's more people in July and August. What we're going to be able to do next, in the next iteration that's going to be released later this year, is that we'll be able to tell our members what percentage of those audiences are now tourists, because we also expect that the July and August audiences are not people that live in the immediate vicinity of this location. So we're going to be able to tell where people are coming from, how many people are coming from around the country, not just within the local market as well.
And Dylan, just to add to that, right, that is because we're leveraging the mobile data and the GPS data and allowing us to understand people's home locations, and now we're able to tell if they're in market, if they're in the CBSA or DMA or zip code area or not.
Right, that's a big power of using mobile location information, being able to tie back to those devices, albeit in an aggregated and anonymous fashion. We can still look at those home locations and then identify what the composition of those audiences are and how many people are coming in from out of market versus local areas as well, all the way down to census block group zip code areas. And this last example, we'll look at Times Square. So Times Square, big New York advertising area, kind of stable throughout the entire year. You see a little bit in October and December peaking up, a little bit of a drop in November. And actually something that we've also noticed in a lot of areas, while we know Thanksgiving in the United States is a big travel month, it also is a time when a lot of people are sort of taking off and stepping away from their day-to-day activities and taking some time away. So we actually have seen somewhat of a little dip in certain areas, but we're going to be fleshing that out a little bit more as we get through our traffic forecasting partnership with City Labs, and we'll be rolling that out with our members later on again this year.
So just wanted to pause for a question we have. And the question is, how does our impression count by hour differ from someone watching a TV show or, being counted as an impression watching a commercial?
So I guess the big difference between the definition of an impression, I guess, would be that for groups like television measurement, there is an assumption that if someone is part of the diary or someone is in the room where the television is located, they are also assumed to be consuming that message. Whereas in out of home, what we've done with the visibility adjustment is to be able to take a look at the total circulation, the total potential audience, both the number of people in vehicle, but then also the number of people that are walking on the street and the likelihood of them looking at an advertising space. And that was something that was deemed to be very necessary in the out-of-home space because it was decided to not be appropriate to assume, as it is done in other media channels, that everyone that has an opportunity to see that advertising space is consuming that advertising space. So not everyone that drives down the roadway looks at every single advertising location, and that's where we differ on how we define what an impression is. Whereas in other media channels, such as digital as well, that if the ad is displayed on the screen, it's called a viewable impression. They don't take one other step beyond that to get to something akin to sort of our audience impressions, which is a likelihood to see metric. Cool. Perhaps that helps answer that question. So just to recap, throughout the entire country, every single piece of roadside inventory we're going to have audience for here, being able to look at these patterns, reflecting the local patterns, the directional patterns, looking at AM versus PM traffic on individual roadways. So speaking of AM and PM, let's start looking at hourly patterns for different roadways. We'll start with the East Village here in New York City. The East Village, for those individuals that aren't familiar with New York City, kind of a hip and trendy spot near a major university. So you'll see some patterns here. You'll see the morning, afternoon, as you do in a lot of places, but you'll also see some late night activity as well, going into sort of 12, 1 o'clock in the morning and then dropping off. Very different from a place like Washington, D.C., very business, very politics, a lot of working individuals. You don't really see anybody until about 6 o'clock, but 6 o'clock in the morning, it hits much faster than other locations. So people are commuting into the city much earlier. And again, that sort of like long tail of people then going home and in and out of the area. Comparing that to Las Vegas, another very social area, you're seeing a lot of late night activity all the way into 2, 3, 4 o'clock. Doesn't really drop down to the levels that you see in other marketplaces. A little bit of activity in the morning, and then stretched out throughout the entire day. And then the last one that we're going to look at, Lincoln Tunnel, one of the major thoroughfares in and out of New York City, some very, very massive peaks of audience in the AM and PM commute, dropping down below daily average in the or early afternoon. And just for some context, during the 8, 9, and 10 a.m. hours, 4, 5, and 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. hours, during those 6 peak commuting hours, that represents a little more than half of the total audience. So out of those 24 hours in a day, half of the audience is being delivered during 6. So just to recap, one of the reasons why this is important is that we need to understand for every single location what that unique audience is and what the profile is of that audience is for every hour, every day of the week throughout the entire year. Because what that allows us to do is to make informed decisions, make better strategic plans on optimizing when and where we deliver messages to potential audiences. We're going to take a step into some of the how we are calculating these impressions, if there aren't any other questions.
Nope, not at this time.
Okay. So one of the reasons why we can even calculate audience by hour is because we can now break apart the day by hour. We've always had daily traffic counts from U.S. Department of Transportation, and we've had national hourly factors, but we need to have a little bit more sensitivity to reflect the local patterns. Just because 2 different bulletins have the same total audience doesn't mean that we can assume that the audience has the same distribution, just like we reviewed in the hourly distribution here. Not every single location is going to have the same pattern. So while we had some ideas of some of the patterns we would expect, we didn't have anything that was specific to every single piece of inventory. Now we do. Because of the mobile location data, because of the detailed speed data that we have, we can answer this question of how many people are able to see a particular advertising location on every single roadway in the entire country and how fast they're traveling, which then gets to the question of what was the dwell time, what was the exposure, what was the opportunity to see those ads. This is very important when you're looking at digital advertisements, because the speed has an inverse relationship with the number of opportunities that you can see. The lower the speed, the more opportunities you can see. If you're stuck in traffic and it takes you 2 minutes to drive by a bulletin, or you're stuck in gridlock in a city and you're driving by a transit shelter, that's going to be many more advertising exposures that can occur as opposed to if you're operating at normal reference speed or if you're driving by at a much higher speed. So you can see that one of the benefits of digital, this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are converting some of their higher inventory that's in front of these congested areas over to digital, is because you can take advantage and maximize your exposures to audience because of that congestion. So those two really pair up together. Not only is there more circulation during those peak congestion periods, but the number of opportunities also goes up at the same time. So why is this important? Well, it's important to understand the hourly impressions for all inventory, and Scott will get into that in a little bit, with being able to decide what type of messages, what particular areas are best suited for certain types of audiences. But when you're talking about digital inventory, it's imperative that you understand the total audience being delivered for every single ad by hour throughout the day. This is one of the reasons why digital has had so much digital mobile and digital online has been able to get so much traction with advertisers, is because of the accountability and the ability to drill down to very granular audience reporting times of where and when those audiences were being delivered. And this is one of the new features of GeoPath's insights moving forward. So when we look at that same distribution pattern for this example that we were talking about, we can now look at the total number of impressions, not just by hour, but by play. So for example, if there is a 8-second ad being played on a screen, we know how many ads are being played in an hour, we know how many impressions were generated on that structure during that hour, we can also now report how many impressions per ad play, which is, again, imperative to exist for it to go into these transactional systems, which is very exciting for a lot of folks that are dabbling in that environment.
So why, again, what does this all mean, right? And again, knowing the number of impressions delivered by an ad unit really allows us to compete and be comparative to other types of media buy and sell for a particular time of day, and et cetera. So I want to really take you through a quick use case for us, so a quote-unquote real-life example, as we've talked about. So here's a place called Butcher and the Burger. It's a burger joint in Chicago area, West Armitage Ave. Trendy burger joint, doubles as a butcher shop as well. So it's nominally priced. Main course is about $10, and with the current target of hyper digital millennials, using digital extensively, spend heavily on housing, food, education. Here's some shots on the right of some of their, what it's like in there. Some of the interesting burgers that they're serving. So
they have the Café du Monde
yeah.
beignet mix, which anybody that's in New Orleans should definitely stop by and get some fresh beignets in a couple weeks.
Right. Sorry. Someone's really pushing the conference today. If you haven't signed up, please go. So I do see there's one more question, but I'll talk through this quick, and then we'll go back to the question. So let's say this Butcher and the Burger wants to promote their new dinner menu. They have some new items, they've readjusted their menu, and they're looking to use some out-of-home advertising. So, as we step and look at it from this distance, right, any of these locations look great. They're all seemingly producing the same number of impressions overall, similar patterns, but it's now that we have this ability, or will have this ability, to understand audience and target audience. We are able to really understand and see when is that audience passing by, viewing, likely to see these pieces of inventory. And you could see, now that we understand and know these patterns, we can use them to make better decisions and more informed decisions. So looking at the example here, location A obviously gets that current target audience, that hyper digital millennial that they're trying to target, in the morning hours. So, and then the middle one, B, is throughout the day. It's a steady kind of pattern that mimics the overall impression level throughout the day, whereas location C seems to be an area that's more frequented by this target in the evening hours, early, mid, late afternoon to the evening hours. So if you think about kind of the messaging you may want to put on each of these pieces of inventory, or make decisions based on that, you can really start to make more informed choices and decisions. It's not that any one of these pieces of inventory is right or wrong, and they can all work together great in a package, but it can also influence and help you understand what messaging and what choices you make, kind of based on the kind of composition of the audience throughout the day. So, again, just trying to tee up the kind of why is that great? What's the key takeaway here is that, knowing that each location has its unique audience and unique audience profile for every day of the week, every hour of the day, we can now start using this, as I was just saying earlier, to make more informed decisions and make more informed recommendations. So, if that's the one thing I'd like to take away from this, is kind of the hourly impressions availability, and ultimately when composition of audiences is available, will allow us to really understand the unique audience profile of every piece of inventory, and allow us to make more informed decisions and recommendations ultimately. And just one last thing before we go back to the questions. We said earlier that this data is available already. It is available as raw data that can be, delivered upon request, but just note that these data files are incredibly large, and that's why we're developing, in the process of developing a web-based ability to get this. And also you can access, we'll be able to access through our API services as well. That'll all be available on May 12th. And we'll be sending out communications around this, so announcing when and where and how to access this information in the coming weeks. So just be prepared and ready for that. Dylan and I wanted to talk about this on this webinar, so everybody, as he mentioned, are starting to get educated on it, starting to become aware of what's coming and what are the benefits are and what are some of the coming capabilities. So just to go to the question that was asked, so so a different spot within a rotation cycle will get different impressions, and I think it's speaking back to that impressions by rotation. Right, slide.
Yeah. So different ads within a rotation during the same hour will get the same impressions, but the same spot at different hours a day will get different impressions. Now, we also are addressing the variable ad length. That's something else that we're going to be able to work with our members on, because sometimes, especially in some street furniture and transit environments, it's a mix of maybe 15 and 30-second ads and stuff like that. So we're also, because we're getting down to this individual ad play reporting level, getting down to the absolute most granular level of audience delivery, we're going to have much more flexibility now as well on how we then aggregate that and report that to our members.
Question is, can you let us know where we could download this and the previous more webinars? Yes, we can. They'll be available on our YouTube channel, as well as we can also send them out directly to anybody. If you want to send an email to me directly, I can send all those links out. So we make all of these more webinars available to all of our members. So that's where we can access that as well. Any other questions? And also note, it'll take a little bit of time to post this up to YouTube. Okay, so let me double check. Another question about the previous more webinars not being able to be accessed up there. So I will reconfirm with that. They should be up there, and maybe they're set to be private at this point, but happy to distribute those to all of our members. So again, if you're having trouble and you want it and need it ASAP, please reach out. One more question just came up. If a client purchases a digital display for 5 minutes instead of the usual 8 seconds, but is within the same hour, do they still only get that 47 count of impression? So you may want to take that, yes.
I might need a little more clarification on this. I'm going to reach out to you to answer this, because I think I might need a little bit more clarification on the ask. So we'll get back to you on that. And that's about it for now.
Okay. And again, I will get back to everybody in terms of where those more webinars are. As I said, they should be on the YouTube channel available then. So apologies if you're having trouble finding those or accessing those. So I'll make sure that they get up there, or make them be revealed, so to speak, as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. Hope this was useful for everybody, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you.